discussing your 40 for chemistry for engineers. This is actually the part 2 of your introduction to material science and engineering. So we have here the topics to be covered today. So we have here modern materials needs, the price and availability of materials, and the total material cycle. So it's as you can see, we started fresh because now I have it compiled rather than in PowerPoint. I know I hope this will help you because some of you might have been having troubles in terms of printing multiple pages. So this is just a 3-page lecture report. So I hope so I have here the learning objectives. So while you're actually at the learning objectives, let me just discuss to you the for your session. Okay, actually for the previews. So we have here the table, a table which you would just have to supply the details based on what you've learned or based on researches. Okay, for the following materials. So last time we actually have identified these materials as the basic classification of the materials. And we have actually identified the structure, property, examples, and techniques. So what I would just like you to do is itemize them in this table. So you would see here, indicate the structure, the atomic structure. Say, for example, metals so binded, the atoms are so binded, okay, something like that. These indicate some of the properties of each material. Say, for example, metals are hard. Okay, guys, you're not restricted to just indicate what's in the presentation. You are very much allowed and very much welcomed or appreciated to explore other resources so that you would know the different properties, structures, or you can explore examples and techniques on how you can actually alter the microstructure of these materials. You are very welcome to do that using this assignment or exercise or activity. Hi. So let me just start with this modern materials needs class processing. So I'll read it to you. So there is no doubt that developments in our technologies are sought for because of their significance and the way the human. Still, the scientific community still faces the need for more sophisticated and specialized material. Why do you think so? Okay? So I would just like you to drill down to that. Think about it. Bakit nga ba? Okay? Madami nang maganda. May nano materials na. Pero bakit it's unending? Okay? So if you would ask me personally, okay, so because everyone is never satisfied, okay, everyone has been needing something that's not yet existing. Okay, so we all want something that's customized. That's why these are actually the considerations or what of the scientists na okay. So since kailangan pala ng mas maliit, kailangan ng mas maganda. Okay, dahil kailangan. Okay, so slowly our environment is trying very hard to adjust. Okay, so we are trying to modify the environment to fit to our needs. So that's my answer to class processing one. So you might actually have different perspectives on that. I won't restrict you. Again, that's class processing. I just shared my own opinion with that. Okay, so I hope you can also do the processing na, okay, so bakit nga ba? Okay? One would I would leave this to you. I won't answer anymore, not to affect you anymore. Okay, so what other challenges should the development of modern materials address? Okay, is there any global issue that stands out as having the most urgent concern to be answered? I would be leaving this to you. You're not required to post or include this into the assignment, but I would just like you to process in. Okay, so that you would be able to visualize, okay, ano nga ba? Okay, ano nga ba? Meron nga ba? Okay? Because these simple questions might actually trigger you for, say for example, in the future, malay natin, diba? One of you might actually be the ones to discover new materials because you have identified the needs, okay, through this simple question, okay? So I would like you to visualize or try to answer this question for your own, okay, and for your own processing. So let me just availability of the materials, which is our second topic for this session. So previously, we have discussed the different properties of your materials. So different properties. Different, I mean, the different needs of your material. Say, for example, it actually needs structure or has structure, or different materials has structure, um, has performance, properties, and processing. Okay, so these components of the material science and engineering are actually your considerations for material process. So, say for example, you are actually analyzing that your structure needs strength. Okay, so therefore you would be choosing material that has strength. Okay, or that is very much forceful, something like that. Okay, so again, those components that are discussed previously are actually the ones that are your consideration for the material selection process. Okay? So, but aside from those four components, we actually have different considerations as well. Others considerations as well. One of which is the price and availability of the materials. Let's first talk about the price of the materials. When we're talking about the price of the materials, literally they are how much the materials are. Okay? So why? Okay, so of course you can't splurge so much in case you would want to design a structure. You can't place diamonds all over, okay? Because we all know that, oh, okay, I need strength, and diamond is the most or the strongest material on earth available. Okay, so let's put diamond all over. Okay, so that won't do in terms of price, okay? And in terms of regulations, that won't also do, okay? So we have these considerations specifically for price, wherein some of you might actually be wondering, bakit nga ba mas mahal yung ibang materials kesa dun sa iba? Okay, so and later, we would try to analyze why is it other materials are more costly than the others. But let's just first go through the three factors that affect the cost of products over which an engineer has control. Okay, so whenever you're choosing for your materials for your products, so you are actually affecting the cost of the product. Okay, sample, diba? Why is the products of China cheaper than the products of the Filipinos? Okay, so or the Americans. I'm sorry, Americans. So the tendency is that some of you might actually be saying that it's because the materials that are used in the Chinese products were cheap. Not in a negative way, but because the materials is in terms of price is lower than what's used in the US products. Okay. True enough, okay, because whenever you're using materials that are cheaper or less in cost, not cheaper in a bad way, cheaper as in less in cost than the other, you would definitely affect your final product in such a way that it would also lessen the cost of that material, because as your raw materials increases, price increases, your final price would also increase. Okay, so that's the challenge for every materials or designers for each of the structures or each of the plant. Okay, so you have to minimize the cost in order for you to generate more profit. Okay, so these are actually the factors that can actually be altered by the design engineers. So whenever you would be given the opportunity to be the one to control the cost of your product. So first off is actually three siya. So the component design, the material, and the manufacturing technique. The component design, so it actually tries to make you visualize that. See, for example, you can minimize the design na instead of having ang daming butas or ang daming kinakabit, ang daming ina-assemble, baka pwedeng one stop eto na agad siya. Okay, component design. Baka pwedeng hindi sobrang critical ng design, okay, na ang dami-daming materials, baka lang naman pwede. Okay, so component design is actually how your structure, how your full structure would work or would be appearing. Okay, it includes the specification of size, shape, and configuration. Okay, so ang key lang is to make it simpler. The component design should be simpler for the materials to be for the cost should be simpler, because the more intricate it has been, the more the cost would be. Okay? Next is the materials. So of course, the choice of materials would greatly affect how much the product is. As stated a while ago, if you'd be using very rare materials for your products, it would entail higher cost. Okay, so if you can have the substitute materials or use the substitute materials that would not suffer the cost or that would not suffer the quality of your material, but why not use it? Okay, so that's the concept. Use the submaterials or the alternative materials if possible. And okay, manufacturing techniques. So we have manufacturing techniques are the ones that processes your materials. So if in case in the manufacturing setup, okay, you would be needing to process your materials, the lengthy process or the length of the processes would also determine the cost. If your process is very lengthy, it needs so much machines, it needs so much processing. Okay, therefore, you would incur so much cost with that. Okay, so we have two types of operations inside your manufacturing. We have the primary operations. These are converting your raw materials to a specified property, includes casting. Say, for example, gold na galing pa talaga sa rock. Okay? So, kailangan mo siyang i-filtrate, okay? Bago mo siya ibigay dun sa next process, which is the secondary operations. Yung secondary operations, pakikinisin siya, okay, pakikinisin, isi-shape siya. Okay, so yun yung secondary operations. So basically, primary operations is done for the raw materials, as in raw na raw, and then secondary operations is done to process the output of the primary operations. So these includes, but are not limited to, heat treatment, welding, grinding, cutting, drilling, okay, boring, etc. Okay, so the costs associated with manufacturing techniques are associated with the machines, una, capital equipment. So if in case you have so many machines needed for your manufacturing setup, so tendency is, syempre, mas malaki yung cost ng product. Next is the tooling. So mga tools na ginagamit, kailangan ng screwdrivers, etc. Labor. Okay, if in case you would be needing a special skill in the task that you would be doing, syempre, kung mahal yung bayad sa operator, mahal din yung ipapatong mo dun sa material, sa pagbenta, sa pagmamahal. If in case needed, machine downtimes, waste, rate of production, gaano kabilis, assembly cost, and other costs, which includes the inspection, packaging, and transportation of the final products. Other indirect factors are related to design, material, and manufacturing costs that affect the selling price, includes the labor and fringe benefits, development, property and rent, and insurance, profit, taxes, and so on. So yun yung mga consideration for in case for the prices for choosing your raw materials or your materials. So next is the availability of the material. Okay, so this is actually attributed to the most reason why a material would be more expensive than the other. Okay, so we have materials na as rare siya. Okay, rare siya, tapos mahirap din siyang i-process, mahirap siyang kunin. Okay, so then the tendency is dahil mahirap siyang kunin at mahirap din siyang i-process, magmamahal yung produkto. Okay, so yung nangyayari for the diamond, the gold. Okay, so current resource is the known deposits which are accessible to man through current technologies, while the resource base includes the resource reserves, and all other deposits that may be made available once prospecting is successful and extracting process are developed. So known and unknown deposits are all part of the resource base. Resources are almost always much larger than resource. So normally yung mga materials natin ay galing talaga sa rock formations or galing talaga siya sa soil formations and so on. Okay, so we have here the McKelvey diagram, which shows the relationship between the resources and reserves. Now, we have your assignment number 2 for this session. Okay, so again, you would be including the first one, which is the chart that is shown previously on on page 1, this one, and the part 2 of your assignment would be trying to get or trying to interpret the McKelvey diagram. Okay, so you would be including how would you interpret what materials are in this part or what materials are in this part. Okay, anything that would actually make you understand at this McKelvey diagram. Okay, so again, that it would be part 2 of your assignment. Okay, I would go through the next na since you would be researching that lecture naman. Okay, so next, I would go to the factors that affect the availability of material. So I'm stating na, some kasi, it's rare kasi, kaya it contributes to the price. Okay, so bakit rare? Okay, so first is the degree of localization. Some materials are very enormous in one area and some area do not have it. Okay, say for example, plastic is the oil. Oil is very dominant or very enormous in the Middle East, while sa atin, hindi naman sobrang sobra. Okay, do meron, pero hindi sobra. Okay, so yun, degree of localization. So, merong different territories kung nasaan mas madami yung different materials. Okay? And yung different areas na yon, meron silang way kung paano ipaprocess yung, kung yung yaman ng bansa nila. Okay? So yun, it affects the availability of your material. So next is the size of the reserves and the resource base. Okay? So some of us has small reserves of it while the others has bigger ones. Okay, so the tendency is if in case you would be needing so much, okay, you would have to import from the others. So next is the energy requirement of mining and processing. So some naman of us has many of it, or some of the countries has many of it, but the tendency is that some do not have advanced technologies to mine, or others naman, yung syempre hindi natin itatago yung kurakot function na under the table yung processing ng inyong materials, kaya nauubos siya, mga ganung bagay. So yeah, factors kaya minsan naaapektuhan yung availability ng inyong materials. The future of engineering materials availability. The coping mechanisms for shortages include material efficient design. So kaya unang-una pa lang baka pwedeng yung design is very simple, design is very efficient in such a way that it doesn't count so much waste. Halimbawa ay may plate sheet, okay, kesa circle, pwede bang square na lang para hindi masyadong madaming waste mangyayari sa material, mga ganun, okay? So, do we use far more materials than necessary? Do we use potentially scarce materials? We can actually do substitution. Baka pwedeng ito na lang kesa yung rare ang gamitin, okay? So, next is recycling. Okay, recycle. So, baka pwedeng i-reheat siya, tapos dadagdagan lang ng additive, tapos okay na din siya ulit. Okay, so yan, recycling. So, these are the concepts on how we actually try to retrieve our current materials. So shown here is the total material cycle. So this is the cradle to grave life circuit of the materials, wherein you are trying to consider the environmental impact of using this material. So your raw materials are actually coming from Mother Nature, of course. Okay, so then pinaprocess mo siya. So, casting, forging, or filtration, okay, and the like. Okay, then afterwards, ipe-present mo na siya as engineered materials, gagamitin ng inyong manufacturing or ng structural engineers nyo, gagamitin na siya. Then, after that, magagamit na siya as bahay, okay, o magagamit na siya as material, cellphones, okay. Then, yung process na yon would generate waste, okay. Then, hopefully, yung waste na yon ay hindi siya sana, ay hindi siya diretso lang sa earth. Okay? Sana i-recycle din siya at i-reuse para magamit uli for the next cycle. Okay? So, but most of us, madalas ay papunta na sa waste. Tapon na yan. Okay? Hindi na nire-recycle. So, pati po si material, hopefully ay nire-recycle. Bilang future material analyst or engineer, sana papunta kayo sa path na to, not on this path. Natapos na agad siya. Okay? Pagka na-recycle. Though it's part of the law naman that you have to recycle your materials. But still, it's a quick reminder for each of us to go to this path rather than this path. To the right path rather than to the left path na completely waste natin yung materials natin. Okay? So that ends our chapter 14 or our module 14. For questions and clarifications, feel free to message me on